You are now tuning into the Resilient Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Resilient Podcast. This is episode 49, and I am your host, Rob Aurelius. I'm excited, folks, because one more episode, and we're reaching another milestone of 50 episodes of the Resilient Podcast. I can't believe it. But it's episode 49. It is the end of February, and today I have a special guest. This happens to be the first guest of 2026. Her name is MéLisa Best. We recently came across each other on social media. As you all know, the Resilient Tribune documentary, The Resilience Project, is going to be out next month. And, you know, through my wandering around on Instagram and trying to find resources and whatnot, I came across her page. When I saw her page, I immediately, connected with her. We have been connected for some time now, and I love the work that she does. And, like I said, as I kept going through her stuff and also going through her background, I said, listen, I need to have this person on my podcast. So when I was thinking about the first person to be on the podcast for 2026, I said, who better than MéLisa, because it is Black History Month. And I know that she is a woman of color that is in this special industry of film. And she is also a fellow podcaster as well, too. But I don't want to give too much information about her. I'd rather her say it herself. So first of all, MéLisa, thank you for coming on to the podcast. I appreciate it. I really love what you do. But I have to ask, for those who may be meeting you for the first time, who is MéLisa beyond titles and accomplishments?
Well, first of all, Rob, what an introduction. Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here, and I'm honored. Thank you for even reaching out to me. So my name is MéLisa Best, as we talked about. I'll start with the titles, then I'll strip down to what I am, who I am without that. So
Okay.
I am a director, producer, writer, and founder of an award-winning creative and production studio called House of Infinity Studios. And stripped down from all of that, I am a New York native creative woman with a SoCal heart and a Grecian retirement relocation plan who is blossoming and becoming and returning every single day. That's who I am. Hi.
I love that. You mentioned SoCal, right?
Oh, yeah, LA. I'm an Angelino in my heart.
I see. Yeah. So I love California. As you may see, I'm wearing my San Francisco Giants hat because San Francisco happens to be my favorite place in the West Coast. Well, California to be exact. But, I've been to a few parts of California, not all yet, but I've definitely been to LA. But San Francisco is the one that has stood out to me the most so far because it does remind me a lot of New York. It's like they say it's a mini New York, but California is bigger than New York. So I was like, I don't know if it's a mini New York. I guess it's a bigger New York.
I feel you. Now we have to switch roles because I've never been to the Bay Area yet.
The Bay Area is beautiful. I'm sure you're going to love it. So,
Right.
We're on the Resilient Podcast, and, I would like to ask you, what does resilience mean to you personally?
So ironically, Rob, I, for a very long time, really had resistance to the word resilience. I really did for a very long time. Because for me, the word resilience denoted this idea that you have to struggle through something, right? I feel the same way about words like coping or enduring. It's like, why do we have to struggle? But I realized that life comes with ups and downs, the yin and yang, right? Unfavorable seasons sometimes come upon us. And so for me, resilience really has I have grown to understand that resilience really is about who are you going to be, who are you going to decide to be when those unfavorable seasons come, and what are you going to decide to do when it comes at your door, right? And so I've had a new relationship with the word lately, because really it is a decision. And I've been thinking about this as we were talking. I'm thinking about like preparing for the podcast. I was just like to myself, I was thinking of this time when I had applied for something and I didn't get it, right? And I was crying about it and like just down in the dumps. And I often have my MacBook iOS press releases, aka my video journals on my MacBook. So I'm like going off in the journal, crying, flipping out. And then I remember writing earlier that day in my journal, like, I only accept success. So I flipped the record button back on into my photo booth album. And I'm like, how can I write, I only accept success, and sit here and feel defeated? Like, no, right? And that truly does sum up who I am and my word and like my idea for resilience. It's like, again, deciding what you're having and going after it.
I like that. Sounds good. I like the fact that you said that because last year, a close associate of mine, his name is Cornelius, who's actually an educator here in Brooklyn as well too. He talked to me about that off screen, and even talked about it on the episode. Like, he didn't want to he didn't really believe in resilience. He was like, we shouldn't have to, have resilience as something. But then, like, at one point, I remember he went through some changes, and this was off screen, and he shared that with me, and he was like, listen, like, I got a new office space. I had to relocate because of him and I actually met through our previous office space. We literally were on the same floor together. So his office was like maybe a few doors down from mine, and things got rough. With this new administration, things changed for the Board of Education, and him being a teacher, an educator, he's been an educator for such a long time. His wife is also an educator as well too, and he has 2 girls in school. So he was telling me that there was a lot of changes, and he was like, listen, I don't like how we're being treated now. We're going to be treated like independent contractors, and it's already as tough it is. And I remember as a child being this kid that always did these bad things right in school. And when I grew up and I said, oh my God, I can't believe what I put teachers through. I can't believe what teachers go through on a regular basis and how much they get paid a year. Teachers don't deserve that, And he's sitting there and telling me these things. And he's like, listen, so, because of all these budget constraints and all this stuff that was going on, he was like, I had to relocate. I had to relocate out of that office location and find me another office, something more affordable. And then there was a few other things that were happening around that time. So then he mentioned resilience. And he said, like, I have to find resilience. And I was like, wow, coming from somebody who didn't really want to apply resilience into the lifestyle, but here we are. So I like that you revisited, and now you have a different perspective about resilience. So I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned something about like, when there was a time that you didn't get something and you was pretty much overwhelmed over it and stuff. So can you share a moment in your life where you had to be strong even when you didn't feel strong at all?
Absolutely. Honestly, Rob, I've had many moments like that. I think the most recent is something, since we're talking about Black History Month, is something that I feel like most Black women especially will be able to resonate with. And that's on, the topic of being disrespected, especially in spaces like corporate America. That was something that I guess it resulted in me being in my lowest point, having realized that this inciting incident was a moment of disrespect, but the truth is I have been disrespected for years, probably throughout my entire career in corporate America. And so like hitting me with that truth made me feel like I was at my lowest point, to be honest with you. Solange's album, A Seat at the Table, became like my heart song at some point. Every morning I would wake up and listen to that album to, find some type of healing and resolve. And so without saying too much, because, NDAs and stuff, but it wound up being like a legal situation that I, for the first time encountered. Never dealt with something like that. And that was weighing heavy. And I felt very alone. I felt very alone and unsure and emotionally distraught, but I think that what carried me through was surrounding myself with high frequency things like the Solange album, right? But also people, maybe who have been through something. I think that there's some type of power when we speak our truth and honor our truth, and find people who resonate with that, right? That mantra of like, your truth is gold, right? Because then it allows us to find our people and find people who may have the resources to help us through to the next thing, and give us the strength that we need so that we can fly on our own, right? And so I think that was, even though I didn't feel like I didn't want to be strong because I just needed to wallow. But even in that moment, I think the wallowing and the flowing with your emotions is strength right there as well, and so at the end of it, I feel at my zenith in certain areas, even though I'm still like dealing with a few, tail end results of that, right? You make a big move and there are things that have like a residual effects. But I mean, from it, I was able to alchemize my pain, and I think that part of the strength is also not only flowing, but stillness. So you can see clearly of like what your next steps are and what you want to do. So the alchemy of my pain was, I have a big thing about creativity is your currency. And so I was able to turn that into something which is now a script that I have an agent for, I'm represented for, right? It helped me to even create the creative production studio, right? Like just remembering like, who are you really? You asked the question at the beginning of this podcast, like without the titles, who are you? Are you that girl? Are you that guy? And so how are you going to stand in that? Right. So I think that has been like the most recent example of strength in alchemizing that. Yeah.
I like that.
Thank you.
I really like that. We are a few days shy from International Women's Month. I'm a big advocate for women's rights. I have been an advocate for women for a long time. It has a lot to do with how I was raised, how I was brought up, and just seeing the things that have happened around the world when it comes to women. How women for the first time in the last few decades have been making history. And I said, well, how come they haven't been making history forever? Because at the end of the day, and I always tell people this, let's remember that we're all on this earth because of a woman. A woman gave birth to us. Two men cannot, a man cannot get pregnant and have a child, but a woman can. And everybody has a mother somehow, some way. And, growing up in like, for example, my background, my family comes from the Dominican Republic, the Caribbean. A lot of the stuff in our culture is normalized. And, when you come to this country, good thing that there's rights now that defend women. But, I've noticed that even in this modern day in 2026, there's still countries around the world and cultures that still don't give women, the respect that they deserve. And I tell people, I'm against that. I'm very against that. I feel that women need to be respected because at the end of the day, we all came from a woman's womb. And I've been fighting for women's rights for a long time. And it has a lot to do with how my mom was treated, by my dad and her boyfriends from the past as I was growing up. It has a lot to do with my grandmother. And I always tell the story to everyone about my grandmother, how she came to this country. She came to this country because she was fleeing a dictator that wanted to kill her because she was helping people. She was giving back and she saw people struggling. She saw people getting killed, especially the Haitians across the border from, the same island. And when she started helping these people, these border people were going back and telling, the dictators' people, hey, there's a woman that's constantly at the border every day helping these people, giving them food, giving them shelter, giving them clothes and all this stuff. Why is she doing this? And when they asked her, why are you doing this? Her response was, because when they cross over, you kill them, you kidnap them, you rape them, you do all these things. And I'm tired of seeing people getting killed, especially women. I'm tired of seeing these mothers crossing over, promising their kids that she's going to come back with food and stuff and that, and she never makes it back home. So when I was educated on those things, and, when I was able to put two and two together about a lot of things, I said to myself, we got to respect women more. And I started telling people that. I started telling my male friends, and, a lot of them kept laughing at me because of it. And they're like, oh, what do you mean we have to respect women? I was like, we have to respect women. I'm like, do you care about your mom? Of course I care about my mom. Do you care about your sisters? Do you care about your aunt, your grandma? Of course. Okay, so if you care about them, you got to care about every single woman out there as well, too. And, I will say this, I've dated, this podcast started because of the pretty much, like, this podcast started an inspiration behind a few words that were told to me during a breakup 2.5 years ago. 2 years ago. It's about to be 2 years now in March. But 2 years ago, I had a breakup with someone who I thought I was going to have a future with, someone who I thought it was going to be my forever. And during that breakup, we had a conversation about a lot of things. And, this podcast became, was created because of that, because of some of those words of encouragement, because of some of that advice that was given to me. So when it comes to like women, I always say, when we see, more women getting involved in more things, like women doctors, women creatives, women, politicians, women lawyers and whatnot, I tell people this is beautiful, this is great, because women they deserve the same rights. They should have had the same right from a long time ago. And I always tell people, I said, listen, there's a reason why they call it Mother Nature. So I tell them, it seems like women do control the world. And I tell people it's just the honest truth. And we could go on and on and on about that, forever. But I just had to put it out there that, I think that, when I'm hearing you telling me that, you felt like, you've been disrespected for a long time, that kind of bothers me when I hear things like that, because I say, like, I hate that they have to go through that. I hate that, and some people say, oh, well, guys go through things too. I was like, yes, they do. But, women have been disrespected for far too long. And I'm glad that we are in a place right now where there has been so much progress. And, it's still happening. It's always going to continue to happen. But at least women have so much rights today. And I'm like, thank God for that, because if they didn't, we still would have been living in a world where a lot of things would be happening. And we need women just as much as, they need us, but we really do. And I'm happy to see somebody like you, with all the accolades that you have and where you're at in life, doing beautiful things. And, I'm very thankful for that. So we mentioned Black History Month, and well, you mentioned Black History Month, and we want to talk about that for a bit. So during Black History Month, we reflect on legacy and history. So I wanted to ask you, how has your cultural background shaped the way you move through life?
So, Rob, this is first of all, I just wanted to just double back also on something you said. I want to acknowledge you and say thank you for being the leading energy within your community and your friend group, right? And letting men know the proper way, shall we say, to see women and what perspective to see women in. I appreciate that. I'm sure many women would appreciate that too, right? So just wanted to double back on that. But to answer your question, this question is a little difficult for me to answer. And it's because while I am a Black woman, I didn't grow up in a household with heavy Black culture per se, right? In my wildest dreams, my household looks like soul food a little bit, right? There's Sunday dinners, and you know what I mean? I do have my like sweet potato pies and, all the things. And within my friend groups, I think we've created some type of culture together. But
Okay.
MéLisa best by herself. I didn't grow up in that type of household. However, what I do know is that I'm a woman of the world. And so the culture that I've created is through traveling and having a world perspective and, grabbing this a little bit of that culture and putting it into my life and how I move. For example, I told you I have a Grecian retirement and relocation program. Their expression of saga siga, slowly, slowly, is kind of like how I approach life, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, on the Black perspective and me building my Black culture and Blackness, it really has come from media. Honestly, I've felt very connected. Once I became exposed to it, I felt very connected to a lot of Black media. Um, for example, Spike Lee joints, right? It helped me to understand the cultural nuances. I think Crooklyn is one of my favorite movies. I didn't grow up in
Mm-hmm.
that perspective per se, but it
Mm-hmm.
helped me to understand that lens, right? Um, I was recently gifted one of my favorite vinyl. Well, it was my favorite album. This is wild. I was a little girl listening to the album, but it was a Salt and Pepper, very necessary album, right? And it's like, the coats and the this and the that, and understanding a little bit of the nuance of hip hop culture, right? Which kind of has a reflection of Black culture. And then I would say the one thing that has been resonant for me, that if I had to continue on a legacy, it is community and connection. Um, I stand 10 toes down on that, in general. And when I see my Black people, continuing to work together and collaborate together, it really means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
When I see us unlearning and unshedding narratives that have been placed on us in certain ways, that really means a lot to me. And that's part of like rebuilding culture. And I've been thinking about this a lot about, when we talk about legacy, sometimes we're talking about it from a lens of so much trauma,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a beauty, again, in alchemy, in our decisions every day to alchemize the trauma into wealth. And so there are ways that generationally that we can now have generational wealth instead of trauma, and not just
Mm-hmm.
wise, right? The way we speak about ourselves and each other, the time we give each other, the resources that we're able to share and spread, etc. So those are, and then also like the storytelling, like we're both in filmmaking, right? And so like the storytelling and the stories we choose to tell and highlight and the voices that we choose to share, that's also part of personally my culture and now Black culture and all of the things. So it was a little difficult to answer that question because I always think back of like childhood and what is my culture per se. It was not this, it's not a household, but all of these little pieces have made me who I am and now be in touch with what Black culture means to me.
No, I love that answer, to be honest. I think it was a great answer, and I thank you for answering it the way you did. When we were, talking about planning this podcast, I had asked you what your favorite word was. You told me your favorite word was abundance. So, I wanted to ask you, when did that word become personal for you?
Honestly, Rob, it was when I realized who I was and my true impact on people, places, and my own life without other people's, voice in my head, right? It's like the moment when Neo sees the Matrix for what it is, and now you can't go back, and you recognize your own power, and that was the moment. And again, I've had low points in my life, and each low point allows me the stillness. But as I've become more mature in life, I really look forward to the stillness because I truly believe that the stillness gives me clarity. And
Mm.
so I would say over the past like 5 years, with societal things that have made us collectively pause, if you get my drift, wink, wink. But then when we take our own individual pauses as well, you really see who you are. So I implore that to anybody, to if they're struggling with like, their worth and self-worth, I think it's important to take a moment and a step back and pause and really see yourself.
I love that. You mentioned alchemies, and every time I hear the word alchemist, alchemy, and all that stuff, it reminds me of a good friend of mine out in California. by the name of Victor Melgar. Victor is actually one of my favorite associates. He's doing a lot out there. He's currently, I believe, now in San Diego. He started a CBD business a few years ago, a cannabis business, and it was more for the perspective of healing, and he did it around the time of COVID. So when he was out in the market, what he was telling people was, look, I'm only here to help people that are recovering addicts, people that are recovering from pain, from surgeries, people, from injuries and stuff like that. So I wanted to take a moment to give a shout out to Victor, because he calls himself Vic the Alchemist. So every time I keep hearing the word alchemy, I was like, I keep thinking about him. And, now that we're on that note, before we take a quick break, just wanted to give a shout out to Nala Health, which is one of our sponsors. I just mentioned that, Victor, started his own CBD business, and, Nala, their CBD personally has helped me so much with anxiety. And now they have all these other phytoceutical formulas that are out in the market now that work for, insomnia, inflammation, addiction. So guys, on this screen right here, you'll see the link for nalahealth.com. Every time that you go on their website, and this is not just one time, this is every single time that you do, when you're in checkout, just make sure that you type in for the discount code TRP10 right here on the screen, and you receive 10% off your purchase. So, nalahealth.com, TRP10, and 10% off your purchase. And remember, they have a lot of things on that website. They have oils for a lot of things, for a lot of natural remedies. And I love Nala Health. It's some of the best products that are out in the market. And I'm thankful that they're one of our sponsors. So we're going to take a brief break. We're going to be back in about 30 seconds. And when we come back, we will finish some more questions with MéLisa, and we'll continue to talk about abundance. So I'll see you guys in a bit. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Resilient Podcast, episode 49. We are here with the first guest of 2026 on the Resilient Podcast. We're closing Black History Month, and we have MéLisa Best here with us. We've been talking about abundance. We've been talking about alchemy. We've been talking about Black History Month, and, I'm excited to get to know more about MéLisa, because like I said to her when I was talking to her personally, I've seen a lot of the stuff that she's done over the years and how long she's been active. And I'm like, wow, she's doing a lot of good things. And I just recently got into the film industry only because of this documentary. But in the past, my media company, ARCG Media, I started that company with a partner at the time. His name is Rick, and Rick was in school for film. He went to SVA. So before Rick and I started ARCG, I helped him with some of his projects in college, some of his short films. So I acted maybe 2 or 3 times, and not something that I'm gonna brag about, but I had a lot of fun with it. And I've always been inspired by the film industry because I love watching movies. I love watching films. I'm very into documentaries. And that's why I decided to make my own about resilience. And, I really believe that people should, take the time to look at some of the work that MéLisa's done. And, before this episode ends, we're going to make sure that we know where to find her work. But I did wanted to ask you a question. We talked about your childhood, we talked about my childhood as well too. And, I always ask people this type of question. If you could sit down with your younger self, what would you tell her about her value and her future?
Oh, that girl. I would tell little MéLisa. I have one of my favorite pictures of myself. Is after I was a flower girl in one of my cousin's wedding. I was probably like 5 years old, and it's just I really was. I was a cutie. I was a cutie pie, and I would. I look at the picture often, actually, and I would tell her, "Girl, you're a star, and you always have been, and you knew that. You knew that." And I would tell her, "Don't let anyone take you or talk you out of your knowing and your place and your vision." The spoiler alert is that you returned. Hi, welcome back. And I'm so proud of you.
I like that. I like that. I always ask people that, like, especially now, since I started this podcast, sometimes I'll ask my friends when we're out at dinner or something, and I'll say, what would you tell your younger self? And they'll be like, are you serious? Like, we're in the middle of having dinner or we're in the middle of celebrating something. I'm like, no, seriously, what would you ask your younger self? If you could talk to your younger self, and it's like, you know, I'm sure you saw this trend a while ago. I think it started, I don't know if it was in 2024, 2025, where people were using like this Photoshop thing where they were like taking a picture. Yeah, the filter where they were taking like a picture with their younger self. Yes. And there was actually pictures of people carrying their younger selves, right? So it's like, I remember one time I saw a picture and I thought it was somebody with a child of theirs, and I'm like, wow, that child looks just exactly like them. And then as I read the caption, I found out that it was actually them and they're young in themselves. And I was like, oh my God, it's not even their child. It's actually them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I said, yeah, you know, like, this is really a thing. Like, what would you say to your younger self? You know, and people ask me all the time, like, yeah, what would you tell your younger self? And I was like, listen, my younger self was just so confused, so angry, so sad, trying to figure out why everything that was going around was happening. As I became an adult, I realized that that's just things that made me who I am today. It allowed me to realize what I tolerate, what I don't tolerate, what I stand for, what I don't stand for. And I'm glad, like, you know, obviously, if I could choose how my life was as a child, I wouldn't have to go through any of those things. But I'm not saying that I regret it, because at the end of the day, again, it made me who I am today. You know, so when I hear people talking to their young in themselves and saying like things like that, like, you know, you go girl, or, you know, don't let anybody tell you, you know, you can't do it or whatever. It really does. Cause sometimes I ask the kids today, like I see a lot of kids and I say to them, like, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's something that obviously we got asked when we were little, right? It always happens. It's a question that is repeated over and over and over. And you'll be surprised today with what kids say. Back in the day, kids would say, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a superhero. The superhero thing was a lot of people said they wanted to be superheroes. Today, you hear people saying things like, children saying things like, well, I want to be someone that changes the world. And I'm like, oh my God, somebody that changes the world. How old are you? 7, 8. And I'm like, you want to change the world when you get older? Well, how do you plan to change the world? What do you want to do? You know, and the things that they say to me, it's really, really interesting. So it shows that, you know, there has been a lot of development in youth now. Like, you know, kids are a little bit more aware and kids are talking more now, because I always tell people, this is why I always say to people, especially parents, I don't have any kids of my own, but I always tell these people, be careful what you say around your kids. Be careful what you do around your kids, because just because they're little doesn't mean they're not paying attention. Ooh. There's a certain phase and a certain time in that childhood life where they are processing everything and you don't know it, because they probably don't know how to tell you something, or they don't even know, they you know, they're not mature enough to explain to you what they just saw or how they feel about it, you know. But later on in life, they're going to say, I remember this when I was a child. I remember that. You know, sometimes I listen to my sister. My sister's 33 years old, and she just had a baby 2 years ago, her first child. And my sister would tell me a lot of things from childhood, things that I didn't know that she knew or that she remembered, because I tried to forget about it. And she would bring it up to me and I'll be like, oh my God. So she lived that with me too. And I'll be like, wow, you know, I didn't know you was paying attention. And sometimes I'll hear kids too. Like, I have a friend, her name is Stephania. She's one of my best friends, and I talk about her a lot on this podcast. And she has a son. His name is Aries. And I believe Aries is like about to be 5 now, 5 or 6. And the things that he's telling her now, you know, she's like, where is he getting these things from? You know, is it coming from school? And sometimes he goes to school and shares these things. And I'm like, something's going on in the household, or something was said, or he was around a group of people that were doing this and doing that. So this is why I always tell people, be careful where you keep your children around, and be careful what you do around them, because trust me, they are paying attention. They really are. So
100%. And not only be careful what you do, but be careful what you say. There's so much power in the tongue and the things we say. Yeah.
Of course. So my next question to you is, was there a time in your life when you felt that you didn't have enough, whether that was support, opportunity, confidence, or resources? And how did you push through that?
All of the things. check. Yes. There were many times, many times, from childhood to adulthood, right? To sometimes it feels like last week, right? The thing is that I've learned, my through line in life is that your greatest limit is yourself. And if I really do believe, and this is where we have that good relationship with resilience, right? And the word resilience is that if you have a mindset that you're going to go after things, you're going to do it. It really is a mindset and then a decision. There were lots of times, I could tell you a childhood story of like, I didn't feel supported per se, with a musical instrument, right? Learning, I wanted, for example, I wanted to learn the saxophone. And the whole time I've been wanting to learn the saxophone since elementary school. And the, administrative team, they tested all the kids and they said to me that I was tone deaf. So now wasn't able to get the saxophone. My father came up and was like, Beethoven was deaf, like give my daughter the saxophone, right? But by that time, right, like, I don't know what you're talking about, but give her the saxophone. But by that time, all the saxophones were gone. So I was given a recorder first and then a flute. Got the flute and, and I tell this story in intimate circles. It's the first time I'm saying this in a public forum. So hi. But, the flute was never my first love. I always wanted to play the saxophone. And so I go to junior high school. I auditioned to go to junior high school on the flute, and I'm hearing a jazz band in the next room over. And so one summer I say, hey, professor, can you please teach me how to play the saxophone? I really want to know. They have the same fingerings as the flute. I just want to learn this. And he says, no, I'm not going to teach you, but I'll let you borrow the saxophone, play it over the summer. If you can play it, come back. You could be part of the jazz band. I did, Rob. I took the summer and practiced that saxophone every single day. Came back, auditioned. I was part of the jazz band, and I was part of the jazz band through high school. And I still have a saxophone, right? Like, wow. I share that story to say, like, it really is what your vision is, your desire, and then the decision to do it. I stand beside it. There is no real no. And if you hear the no, you're talking to the wrong person, or maybe you need to remix the word, right? Remix the delivery to get you to a yes. But that's just who I've been, so I don't allow my circumstances to dictate what my knowing is of who I know I am.
I love that. I love that story. Mainly because I love the saxophone. I've always wanted to play the saxophone myself. Yes. I'm a big jazz person. I just love how the saxophone sounds. One of the things about me when I used to go to Louisiana, Louis Armstrong Airport, you always used to be a live jazz band. And, I've gone to some places to listen to jazz, and jazz itself is like when it comes to my music genres, I kind of like all of them. But, I'm a cigar guy, and cigar and whiskey, cigar and bourbon. I don't do it as much as I used to, yes. But, when you're having a cigar, it's time for you to like relax, decompress, yes. Kind of like unplug from everything, and it's your time to relax. So jazz is some of the music that I listen to when I'm in an Uber, whether it's going to the airport or going to an event or going somewhere. I always ask the Uber driver, can you please put some jazz music so that I can have like a peaceful state of mind when I'm about to enter this place or I'm about to go home, and the saxophone is beautiful. So I'm glad that you was able to play it. I was glad that you was able to learn it. Maybe hopefully someday I can hear you play The saxophone.
Let me get my
Well,
chops back up, Rob. Let me get my chops back up.
but I truly love the saxophone.
It's
My next
beautiful.
question is about abundance again, and it's interesting because I remember when I first heard the word abundance, it had something to do with like church. I was working for someone at the time, and he was a minister. It was one of the things he did, and we were sending out emails to people that were part of his network, and I think it was a book that he had created, that he had came out with. It talked a lot about abundance. So I wanted to ask you, how do you define abundance today, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Well, one, I'm a huge Kendrick Lamar K. Dot fan. So one of my favorite songs is called Rich Spirit, right?
Okay.
How I would define abundance today is, I'm going to use that acronym. There's a phenomenal motivational speaker and business coach named Coach Stormy. And I heard this acronym from her, and it's become part of like my ethos ever since.
Okay.
It is rich, RICH. It means respect, integrity, character, honor. You have all of those things, you are rich, and therefore you are abundant, right?
Wow.
I thought that was so damn powerful. And now it just kind of has been my marker for how I show up in life, and also who I allow in my space. And listen, some of those, right, one may fall off the other. We are human, and we have ebbs and flows, right? But overall, who are you? Because I will tell you this, some of the most dangerous people on the planet are people who are not poor, but they're poor spirited. When you're robbed of respect, integrity, character, and honor, and the way you show up is that way, I think that dictates to a lot of, the negativity that we have in the world. When you show up in rich spirit or rich energy, you're always thinking about what's the benefit for the next person and then yourself, in no particular order, right? And that's when I feel the other notes of abundance in the 3D or the physical show up. So that's kind of like how I define it. I define it with another word and then another word, but it always part of an ecosystem, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that because when it comes to the word rich itself, like I remember one time someone had asked me, what kind of people do you like to be around? And I remember saying, I like to be around rich people. And they're looking at me at first like, oh, here we go. I was like, hold on a second. Rich in soul. And they're like, what kind of rich? And I'm like, you ever had a piece of rich chocolate? And it was like, yes. I'm like, how good was it? How rich was it? And they're like, oh, really good, really rich. I'm like, so that's the kind of rich I'm talking about. I'm not talking about like, the money rich. And they're like, So I tell them, if you look into the word rich, because we live in a world where when people hear the word rich, the first thing they think about is money. But when you hear about the word rich, if you go back in time and, where it came from, how it was created, it's just same thing with philanthropy, right? Like, I remember a few years ago, and I love this person till this day because he's a close friend of mine, but I had to school him a little bit. I had a friend named Andre, and if he hears this episode, he's probably going to laugh. But, one time he had asked me, what do you want to become when you get older, right? And this is now adult Rob. So I was like in my early 20s, and I said, I want to be a philanthropist one day. My grandmother was a philanthropist, and he's looking at me and he's laughing. And I'm like, why are you laughing? He was like, in order for you to be a philanthropist, you need to be like a billionaire, right? And I was like, oh, really? So I sat there and I was like, you know what? I'm going to let him talk his talk. And then I said to him, Andre, actually, do you know where philanthropy started? And then he's like, well, Oprah's a philanthropist. Bloomberg is a philanthropist. I was like, okay, I understand that. I know who are philanthropists. I know some of these people. But my question is, do you know where philanthropy comes from? And he's like, school me. And I was like, I will. And he Googled it right after. And I said, philanthropy started in churches. It actually started with people giving back before it became a money thing. So people used to give clothes, toys, whatever it was that they could. And then sometimes they would give money. today in society, people hear the word philanthropist. First thing they think about is, yes, people like Oprah Winfrey, Michael Bloomberg, Michael Jordan, this person, that person, who have done philanthropic contributions. But philanthropy back in the ancient days, that's how it started off. So I like how you say a word, you use one word for a different meaning as well too. And it goes back to the word rich. At one point, rich meant something more positive. And now today, a lot of people like to use it like, I want to be rich. I'm like, but what kind of rich? Like, what kind of rich do you want to be? Because I say to them, do you want to be wealthy? Is that what it is? You want to be wealthy? Like, you want to have a lot of money? And I was like, yes. I was like, okay, so you want to be wealthy, but I like that. I've never heard of Court Stormy. I definitely want to look her up and see things, because I like to follow people that make motivational quotes and stuff like that. But I like how you said that. I like how you spelt it out and what it says. Do you mind sharing that again with everyone? Like, rich?
Absolutely. And also, Coach Stormy is a thrill ride, so you'll have a fun time.
Okay, I look forward to
it. And she has a resilient story as well, backstory, which is amazing. But
beautiful.
Her the acronym is RICH, stands for respect, integrity, character, honor.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love all those words, especially the word honor.
Yeah.
So I do have 2 more questions to ask you, because we're about to end this episode soon. And I've had a great time talking to you. Really, really beautiful episode so far. But one of my last questions I want to ask you is, for someone listening right now to this podcast, or even watching it on YouTube, who feels limited, like right now, what practical advice would you give them to start creating a life that feels full and meaningful?
It's practical, but it may not get you immediate results, right? It's going to take some time, but it's the most practical thing you will do. I think of life like, we have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it needs to be inverted with the self-actualization first and be, do, have, right? So in order to be, do, have, one, you have to have a vision, regulate, leap, repeat. Those are the things I would say to you. Vision. What type of life do you envision living? Hold that vision strong, write it down. Many of the great people that we know in our contemporary life, I won't name celebrities, because once you name them, then you find out they fell off the deep end, right? Like, I'm not going to name the people, but go and do your research. See what they did, and they wrote their vision down, right? Hold that vision and write it down. Your nervous system, especially for my, Black and POCs, right? My BIPOCs, our nervous system is the place where our wealth happens, right? And a lot of times in environments, it's kind of dysregulated intentionally. So one of the healthiest, wealthiest activities that you can do, in my opinion, is to learn how to regulate your nervous system. And not only that, but to think about how to have the capacity to hold whatever it is that you're envisioning for your life. There are many times that the things that I've asked for have slipped through my hands because I didn't have the capacity to hold it. Right? So regulating, I'll give you practical of what that looks like. It could look like learning how to deep breathe, learning how to retrain your mindset, replacing negative limiting beliefs with affirmations, right? And then the affirmations into knowing, right? Because it's not enough to just say affirmations. It's now about the leaping part and the doing, which we'll get there. Somatic exercises, right? I'm really big into the wellness activation part of our lives, because that is how to regulate. So that's a practical tip that you can do despite whatever circumstances you're going through. And then the leaping, is taking the steps to yes, saying yes to things that may make you uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable for a little bit because it's based off of your new paradigm. It's based off of your new identity. It's based off of the vision you're holding for yourself, right? So as long as the actions you're taking are aligned or on purpose to your purpose and the vision, do it. Do it. And I've realized that life has, I'm getting a little emotional, life has an interesting way of surprising you when you take the leaps, right? And there are times when I still have to have that conversation with myself as well. I have lots of insecurities and uncertainties, right? But then sometimes you have to look in it and be like, I know you're here to protect me, but move out my way. I'm here to do what I need to do, right? Um, and again, if you have not read, we've been talking about alchemy and The Alchemist, but if you have not read The Alchemist, honestly, it is, I think it's a gift to humanity. It is for me an annual must read, that and Kill Bill, but we'll talk about that another time. I'll tell you the reason why for both. But with The Alchemist, it's all about a young man on the journey to finding his treasure. And no spoilers here, but he finds it because he said yes to align opportunities and then enjoyed the journey despite the challenges, right? Um, at the beginning of every year, I do watch Kill Bill, and not because it's, it really is a lesson in sticking to your vision and having undeniable faith that that's what you're going to go after, period. So those are practical steps I would give. And again, it doesn't seem like necessarily like, oh, let me pause and think and say, most of us are on and conditioned on the have, do, be paradigm. But when you be, do, have, it's a little uncomfortable, but that is the right way to do it.
I like that. Very well said. Very well put as well, too. To bring up Victor again, he's told me about The Alchemist and he's read it 1,000 times, and I still don't have that book. I don't know why, but I think
send me that PO box. I'll send it to you.
I think it's time that I start to read that book. And Kill Bill, I always see people posting pictures on Instagram that they went to go see the play. So I'm like, listen, I used to live in Times Square. I don't know why I didn't go watch it, but I'll be posting that picture one day with the Kill Bill playbook in my hand.
I love it. I didn't even know there was a play for it. That's so okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I always see people on Instagram, like even people that live in different states, they'll come here and visit, and it's one of the first things they do is they go watch Kill Bill on Broadway. It's been around for God knows how long, but it's something that people do. And I always ask them, how was it? Oh, great, love it. Did you see it yet? I was like, no, not yet. I was like, never. So that's something to definitely put on my my bucket list. So folks, we're going to be in this episode soon, but again, I wanted to take this time to thank MéLisa for being on this episode with us today. We talked about abundance, we talked about alchemy. MéLisa is very insightful. She has a very good backstory. She has a very good, I believe you're leaving a good legacy, for other women in the near future, not just women of color, but women in general, those little girls that want to get into that same industry, little girls that are inspired to be writers one day, to create films and whatnot. So I look forward to, somewhere down the line collaborating with you at some point. And, MéLisa, I don't know if you like coffee, but I love drinking coffee. And one of our other sponsors is Matty Rock's Coffee, my business partner, Matty Rock at ARCG Media. Matty came out with his own coffee a few years ago. It's doing great. And it's the only coffee that I drink now. So folks, when you look at this link right here on screen, visit this website and it will take you to the website where you could be able to buy this coffee, and you can buy any type of coffee, whether it's cold brew, whether it's regular coffee. And again, if you use my code TRP10, 10% off the coffee. MéLisa, I'm going to have to give you let you try this coffee some point and you let me know what you think about it. But it's really good coffee. It's some of the best coffee made here in America.
I cannot wait. I literally love it. I love coffee.
Of course. I love coffee. I only have 1 cup a day, though. I only have 1 cup a day.
I try to only have 1 a day. Yes.
Yeah, because if I do more than 1 cup, I'm going to be spiraling, But there's a little trick because, not to plug them, even though they are sponsors, but when I do drink a large cup of coffee and the caffeine starts creeping up on me, I've learned a trick. What I do is I take a little bit of Nala Health CBD and I'll put some of it inside the coffee and then I'll mix it just a little bit. And then, I won't get that crazy crash and all that stuff later on, because I remember, I guess, like fresh out of high school, when I started drinking coffee in my college days, I remember just always feeling like I was bugging out. My heart was racing and all that stuff. And then finally people say, oh, caffeine, it's caffeine. That's what it is. And then when I got diagnosed a few years ago with, I suffer from anxiety, social anxiety, especially for living in New York City. Everybody's like, oh, that's what it is. That's why you start freaking out sometimes in rooms full of people. I was like, yeah, it's social anxiety. So, the CBD helps. And, drinking a cup of coffee and then going to a concert is not recommended, or at least like a Red Bull or something. But, you know, um, this coffee is really good. It doesn't give me this credit because, I was drinking Bustelo since, I was young, because that's the coffee that we had in our household. And I still
What
love
about the
Bustelo.
Santo Domingo coffee? You didn't have the Santo Domingo coffee? That one is.
Oh, I definitely had that. My mom brought it for me.
Okay, that white
time.
bag.
And the white bag. And I remember one time my mom brought it for me twice, actually. And I was like, really, this is coffee from back home? And she goes, yes, it is. And then I went to Louisiana, like I mentioned earlier, and I brought back some of that chicory coffee. Oh my God, that coffee was so dark and strong. My mom was saying, what is that? I was like, Mom, seriously? Like, she was like, no, this is stronger than Bustelo. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. And, once we finished that coffee, I never got that coffee again,
Rob,
but I love coffee.
the next layer in the Thanos ring, the Infinity Stone ring, is the Turkish and Greek thick coffee.
Oh,
That's
yeah. Yeah. And Haitian coffee too, because I had Haitian coffee one time and I made the mistake of, first of all, I don't like my coffee black. I know a lot of people say, why not? But I don't like my coffee black. I like my coffee with oat milk. And I don't put sugar in it anymore. Just my oat milk, and that's it. Sometimes I'll probably put a little bit of lavender syrup in it. Lavender agave syrup, just to give it a little bit of a because sometimes coffee could be a little bitter. But
yes.
I had Haitian coffee a long time ago, first and last time. I don't know if I'll ever do it again. And it was actually a place out here in Brooklyn. And I kept telling the lady, listen, I got to make this coffee light because it's too dark. And, of course, the more milk I put in it, the more colder the coffee got. So at one point, I had to have her reheat it, and it didn't taste as good, but it was very strong coffee, very, very strong. So I'll definitely make sure that when I see you, I'll have a Maddie Rocks coffee for you, a bag of coffee, so that you can try it and let us know what you think.
I'm excited. I'll report back.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you one more question, but before we do that, I also wanted to let everybody know we're officially less than a month away from the Resilience documentary launch. I'm so excited. For more information, visit our website right here on the screen, resilienctribune.com. For more info. And folks, if you ever want to be on the podcast, reach out to us. You can follow us here on the bottom where it says follow us on Instagram and X at The Resilient Pod, or send us an email at info@theresiliencetribune.com, which is right here on the screen as well too. Also, if you want to submit an article to the Resilience Tribune platform, you're a writer. So MéLisa, maybe one day I would love to have a story from you about resilience. We just had an article come out this month by one of my associates, Marvelous, beautiful, beautiful article. And folks, if you want to send a request to submit your story, same thing. Visit us right here at resilienctribune.com, or send us an email at info@resilienctribune.com. So before I ask you the final question, MéLisa, would you please let everyone know where they can be able to find you?
Absolutely. I'm excited about this last question, but here's where you can find me. On my personal Instagram, my Instagram is at MéLisa, MELISA, the best official. Okay. And that's in a lot of different areas as well. So it's MELISA, the best official. I'm also, I started off by letting you know that I am a founder of an award-winning creative and production studio called House, like HAUS, House of Infinity Studio. World travels, right? I speak what I'm telling you. And you can find us at House, HAUS of Infinity Studios as well. And the last thing I'll say, under the house, a very important project, speaking of what we're talking about today, about resilience and reclaiming ourselves and all of that, and Black women and Blackness. One project that I'm super proud of and just really threw the moon over. It's called Black Women Euphoria. It is a film, but then it's also a multimedia experience. And so we now have a fiscal sponsor associated with the project because we have big plans to move this initiative forward, going on tours, expanding it, hopefully into a feature film, and some other things. So you can follow us again at Black Women Euphoria, spelled EUPHORIA, on Instagram, as well as we have bio sites, which is like a small, not a small, but a website for us on all of those platforms. Everything I told you, those handles at the end, you can follow us on bio site as well to get up-to-date information from each of those platforms.
Of course. So all that information that she just mentioned will be right here on the bottom. And finally, we have reached the end of this episode. And like I said, it's been a great one. My final question to you is, because I ask everybody that is a guest on this podcast this question, what is your message to the world and why?
So I thought about this, Robin. Thank you so much for sending this to me in advance because I appreciate it and gave me some time to think about this. It's layered, but I think there's maybe rapid fire lessons in a bottle that I want to share. Okay.
Okay.
So the first one, define success for yourself and remember that success lives in both the valleys and the mountaintops. Learn how to enjoy all of the glimmers in between in each of those phases. The second thing is invest in yourself. It'll be your biggest game changer. I don't care if it means you pick up a book, if you listen to a podcast, you get in a room with expanders. I currently am in a third space community, co-work community, because I said I need new circles and I need to be with expanders. Okay, so they're planning a party. That's that background. But truly, answer the call and do that. Invest in yourself. Coaches, mentors, whatever it is, find a way to do that. And I have lots of mentors and coaches in my head, as well as in my reality, that I actually put money down to say, I need you to coach me, right? 3, in life, you're going to meet 5 people: cheerleaders, sponsors, mentors, collaborators, projectors, maybe 6, and haters. Yeah. Cheerleaders are going to always unconditionally support you. The sponsors are going to speak about your name before you even ask or even had the chance to say no, right? Your mentors inspire and challenge you and coach you to be the best version of you. Your collaborators are looking to collaborate with you. They're pining to work with you. Please make yourself visible out there. I'm speaking to myself too. The projectors are going to put their own fears and their own aspirations onto you. And then they're the haters. We know what they do. I say, pay more attention and spend more time with the former 4, less time, or avoid at all costs the last 2. Number 4 would be a quote by Bruce Lee: "Be water, my friend. Flow." Number 5 is something that one of my actual beloved mentors, Raina Campbell, love you, girl. She said to me that rocked my world and my nervous system. She said, "MéLisa, always remember that you are a gift and a contribution to every room you walk into. Act like it."
That's
Boom.
nice.
And the last thing I'll say, thank you. I agree. It rocked my world. I'm like, that's generational wealth right there. Like, right? But the last thing I'll say, I'll end it with my company motto. It's a tagline. And first of all, I believe that everything we create is an extension of ourselves. And so this is now, it has been always my ethos. Possible knows no limits, right? The only limit to ourselves and our greatness is ourselves. So make sure that you have that mindset always, and you'll soar.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful. I don't think anyone's ever taken that long to share the message. So I thank you for that, for having all of those things listed. It's beautiful. I love how you named all those people, because it is true. We're going to have all of that. We're going to have those people that are going to project their fears. We have a lot of those. Sometimes, unfortunately, they are automatically the first group of people to be like that are your family members. I had that a lot, even till this day. I'm going to be 40 years old in like, what, 2.5 months. I still have sometimes those relatives that still project, their fears onto me. And, I say to them, I love you because you are my relative, but I'm thankful that I didn't follow your footsteps. And I'm thankful that, no disrespect, but I'm thankful that I didn't take your advice when you was giving me advice, because if I did, I would have been a very fearful person. And, one of the reasons why I created this podcast, the Resilient Podcast, is because of that. Because when I had one of the worst moments in my life where I lost someone, two people that I lost in this life that really impacted me really bad. The day that I lost my grandmother, the most important person in my life, and the day that I lost the woman that I thought I was going to marry someday. And I was still healing from my grandmother's death. So, of course, I'm juggling with all of that stuff. I've been through some really dark times in my life. But I said to myself, how do I get out of this hole that I'm in? How do I get out of the dark? I want to see the light again. And those mentors and all those motivators and even the collaborators, those people that were always looking forward to the next thing to do with me, they were trying to pull me out of there. And they said, listen, you're being in there for too long. You got to get out of there. Got to get out of there because that's not who you are. You're the most resilient person I've ever seen, most resilient person I've ever known. I'm like, really resilient? And it's like, yes, come out of there and come live your life. Because at the end of the day, that person that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with, they're going to be living their life and they're going to be doing what they need to do. And she has been doing that quite exactly. So they said, what's the point of her achieving everything she wanted to do with her life after the breakup and you're still stuck there? When, if anything, when you met her, you had more potential. You was doing more than her ever. And if anything, you kind of set that light for her to realize what she wanted to do. Because remember, when you met her, she was not happy with the job that she had. And now today she has a job that she's making a lot of money. She has a lot of benefits and she's much happier where she is now than she was 2 years ago. So why would you take a few steps backward? Someone that you cared about, someone that you love has moved forward and you're going to move backwards? No, absolutely not. So thankful to that. And even her advice, the advice that she gave me during the breakup, I've used it and I've applied it into my life. And that's why I'm like, you know what? We are going to have people in our lives that are going to doubt us, or people that are going to, they think they're looking out for us because they're projecting these fears, and that's fine. That's just who they are. They never really saw anything outside of the box. I grew up in a household where I was the only businessman in my family, and then my sister kind of followed me after that. She said, "Oh, you're one of the most inspirational, motivational people I've known. You motivated me to become a businesswoman." But they couldn't understand the struggle. They couldn't understand they couldn't understand the sacrifices that I was making and the times that I was traveling. I was traveling a lot in the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey. And to them, which kind of bothered me and angered me. But then as time went by, I started to realize, of course, they're not going to know. They've never been in that position before. But one of them used to say all the time, "Oh, there he goes on vacation again. He's going on another vacation." And I'm like, vacation? And I'm like,
I'm hustling.
Yeah. And I was like, because I'm
building an empire.
Yeah, because I'm on a plane and I'm traveling somewhere to go to work. That's a vacation. Traveling was only created for vacations. And I'm like, seriously? And it bothered me so much. And then at one point I remember saying like, oh, that's just ignorant. But then I came to terms with everything and I realized, you know what? People are going to critique what they don't know. People are going to talk about what they don't understand. They're going to challenge it. They're going to question it because they don't understand it. It's okay that they don't understand it. That's not their lifestyle. That's not who they are. It's not their field. So I came to peace with it. And I started being a little bit more humble about it, more calmer about it. So now when they no longer say, "Oh, he's going on vacation" anymore, because 1,000 times that I told them it's not a freaking vacation, but now it's like, still till this day, when people don't understand what I'm doing, I say to myself, it's either I explain it to them once and they either get it or they don't, but I'm not explaining myself again. And I'm not going to continue to explain myself. I am only going to make myself available for those that want to know more about it and want to know how to get there because they want to do it. That's why I always ask everybody, what would you tell your younger self? And also, what would you tell somebody out there that's struggling or somebody that's in the same field as you that's starting off? Because this serves to them as motivation and inspiration. I've been inspired by so many things. I've been motivated by so many things. But I'm glad that I'm at a point in my life where I'm fully making my own decisions. And I haven't allowed anybody to control my decisions in a long time. I grew up with a lot of people controlling and dictating how to live my life or where I was going to be, what school I was going to go to, what passions I was going to have, and what job I was going to have. And I'm like, holy crap, it's my life, but you're telling me how to do it. You're telling me what kind of job to have. So I'm glad because it did piss a lot of people off, but I'm like, you know what? It's my life. And I'm glad that I'm doing it the way I want to do it because I'm the one making the money. I'm the one that's got to do the job, not you. So, that's just the way it is. So, folks, we have reached the end of this episode. MéLisa, thank you so much for joining the Resilient Podcast today. I look forward to what's next. I look forward to hearing more about this project that you're working on. And folks, she's already giving you the information. It's going to be there when you guys, when this episode's available on YouTube, you guys will be able to see it. As we close Black History Month, it's been great. Now we got to get ready for the March Madness, as I always say. And again, I really learned a lot from you in this episode, so I truly appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And on behalf of MéLisa, this is Rob Aurelius, Resilient Podcast. I'll see you all for episode 50 in the beginning of March. And folks, remember to always remain resilient and be well. Peace.